edition of the Founders Interview on Webbiquity. Today's episode is sponsored by Shindig, virtual event platform Shindig. Create virtual events that make people say you had to be there. Check them out at shindig.com. So today I'm talking to Kris Eul, one of the co-founders of Kinetic. Welcome, Kris. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today, Tom?
Awesome. It's springtime, so we love it in Minnesota. I think you notice we've got the target field background here, so we're meeting virtually at a behind home plate at Target Field today.
Oh, fun! All right.
So to start off, I guess tell us, if you would, just briefly, sort of, what Kinetic's all about. What's the problem that you're trying to solve here? Who are you solving that for, and what makes your way of solving it sort of different or better than the alternatives out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thanks for having me. My name is Kris Eul. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kinetic. Our website is joinkinetic.com. And we are the place where professionals can build more meaningful relationships. So through thoughtfully curated introductions, office hours, and virtual coffee clubs, we help our members accelerate progress. So when it comes to what we're offering today and how it's different, if you take a look at the landscape of ways that someone can reach out to somebody new and expanding their network within the industry that they're in or trying to get in, it's a heavy lift. We're often left with scouring LinkedIn, sending out cold emails that maybe not someone will respond, and if they do, will they actually be able to help? And when all the stars align, hey, not only will someone be able to help, but we can help them too. So we take a lot of the guesswork out of expanding your network and making sure that we can connect our members with credible and experienced professionals that are able and willing to help them in whatever they're working on. So our beachhead is within the tech industry. So if you were to go on our site today, if you were to sign up, we have about 800 members. As far as our demographic, we skew towards the experience side. So nearly 60% of the members on Kinetic today have over 10 years of experience. Over 90% have at least 4 years of experience within their respective industry. And we have an average conversation rating of a 4.8 out of 5. So what we're finding is that, again, if we can actually have dialogue, if we can have conversation, we can remove the barrier of the who you don't know in your professional development, some really good things can happen.
Excellent. Couple of quick answer things. So year founded?
2020. Yeah, 2020, April 2020. So we're coming up on our year, and I think a lot less gray as I take a look within the camera here. But so I prior to this, I was at Kipsu, which is a company, a high growth company here within Minneapolis in the Twin Cities, that focused on they built software for hotels and resorts. Of course, when a global pandemic sweeps the globe, right? You're one of the first line items to go. So unfortunately, I got furloughed, and I got furloughed like on a Friday. The first Friday in April. By that Monday, I had somehow convinced a good friend of mine who's now a co-founder, as well as my wife, that, hey, there's a prime opportunity here to go after, and we should go do it. So nonetheless, I was asked to come back in October, about 6 months later, which is great. The company, Kipsu is thriving now as they welcome guests back to the hotels and to the resorts with their partners. But we had made enough traction at that point in those 6 months that I was ready to double down and do this full time.
Great. Any funding or just self-funded so far?
Bootstrapped right now and in the process. So it's been a fun journey, and there are some things that I probably would have done differently when I started off this process. For me, I'm a first time fundraiser. Often you hear the expression, you're learning to build the plane, learning to build the plane as you fly it. And that's exactly how the process has been.
Great. And anything you can share about company size?
Yeah, right now it's just a few of us. we are with the fundraise. We will be hiring a couple of more folks, one senior engineer, as well as a senior designer. So that will greatly help. But again, as far as attraction, just over 800 members today. We've made over 600 introductions. Again, our quality is a 4.8 out of 5 conversation rating, 4.6 out of 5, or over 95% of the introductions that we make want to meet again. So what initially started off as introductions and just this one-time meeting really spun off into, well, how do we get more of this to happen? How do we bring this at scale, and how do we make sure that if our members want to have more thoughtful conversations with those in their industry, that they have the opportunity to do so? And that's exactly where office hours and coffee clubs came from.
Great. So now, other than what happened at KIPSU, sort of what inspired you to work on this problem and come up with a solution?
Yeah, absolutely. So prior to KIPSU, I was with a boutique social media agency, and we got to work with some big brands, some professional sports teams, and some big CPG brands. And my job was to help develop and deploy social tools to interact with fans and interact with consumers. And what we found during that time, and what I started to realize, was that the way that we measured engagement or interactions was very micro level. So it was all about how many, how much could you build that follower count, how many retweets, how many likes, how many, scrolls, how much time can you get them to spend on your site and on your platform. And there was a lot of these vanity metrics. And so what I realized in the time was that we were connected, but we're not really connecting. It was very surface level, and I wanted, or I was looking for more. There has to be something more out there to help expand my network. And so along the way, in 2015, I write this blog post that I post on LinkedIn that actually says how LinkedIn can become more valuable than Facebook. And I talk about, hey, take the world's largest professional network and actually enable the professionals on that site, on that platform, to connect with each other based on those interests and those goals, and do it in a really thoughtful way. Focus on where they're going and what they're working towards versus their previous experiences, or some of the other factors like where they're located or the education and things of that nature. And it could be something really powerful. And unfortunately or fortunately, right? They didn't build it. They didn't create it. So, hey, when a pandemic hits and we're stuck at home, and at the time too, in April, there was a shelter-in-place order where we couldn't go to networking events, right? But yet we had high unemployment rates. We had a lot of turnover. We had a lot of people in transition, and we still had to figure out a way to move the needle. And I think we struck at a good time.
That's a great segue right there into the next question, which is so once you had the platform, at least the initial version of it put together, what were your best channels for getting the word out there to the people you wanted to reach about Kinetic and what it does?
Yeah, so we initially started off as like micro focused on startups, and we had a bit of an unfair advantage with my background, my co-founder's background in the startup ecosystems, here in Minnesota and as well as Wisconsin. So we got plugged in pretty quickly, and what we were able to do is in October we were able to partner with Ministar, which is a local startup organization here in the Twin Cities that we powered the virtual networking for their mini bar events in October, and then the next month after that, November, we did the virtual networking for Wisconsin Startup Week. So from that alone, we got a few hundred people, and it certainly helps when you get a little bit of print in a large publication. We had an article ran in the Star Tribune in January, February. We launched via Product Hunt. The number one hunter on Product Hunt, Chris Messina, hunted our product, and that also always helps quite a bit. And so what's funny is that we have yet to spend any money on paid ads or a common question I get is, what's your CAC? We don't know. We don't know because we haven't spent any money yet. So that's something that along the way we're going to have to obviously figure out. But for right now, there's organic growth happening because we're finding our sweet spot in this startup tech space.
So I see that you're active on social media. You mentioned Ministar and other local organizations are great places to start growth. Doing anything in content marketing?
Not too much yet, and I think that no other reason than we're just a smaller team that's going through a growth period right now and focusing heavily on just doing what we do today really well and keeping that consistency and building that reliability with our membership base, and then also being focused on this fundraise so we can really put the gas on the fire and double down on our efforts.
Just wondering, because you had mentioned the article that you wrote for LinkedIn back in 2015, and it seems like there's some thought leadership there. Obviously, this is something you've thought a great deal about. So, and you've got a passion for it. So that could definitely be an interesting kind of message to get out there about that whole thing about how LinkedIn, does what it does. But
and I think too, a common question we get is how is this different than LinkedIn, or how is this different than Clubhouse, right? I think, with the rise, the meteoric rise of Clubhouse, right, a lot of people are shifting there. And I think what we're finding is that if you were to put, this spectrum of conversation, you've got Clubhouse where it's the audio drop in, where it's, go in and hop in as you're available. It's not always guaranteed the topic that is going to be discussed, based on the size of the room. You're not always guaranteed to be let up on stage and ask a question and, really have a conversation. We're on that conversation, spectrum. We're just on the other side. We're saying, hey, let's be intentional about this. Let's be purposeful about this. Let's take your goals and your interests, make sure we can do a really good job in aligning you based on those introductions or the office hours that we suggest based on what you're looking for. And let's set a date and time and discussion topics so you can go into it knowing exactly what you want to ask and what the other person's going to be looking from you. So I think, if anything, Clubhouse has shown us that more and more people are spending their time outside of their professional lives on audio or talking or having conversation. In a way, conversation is coming back, which is a really good thing. We can be so much more outcome based when we have a conversation versus a lot of these transactional dialogue or discussions where it's, one word sentences or a couple word sentences and it's yes, no, or it's just too short. It's just too concise to really dig into the details. So the more complex the topic, the more the easier that it is to ask questions and have an understanding, the richer the experience will be.
The other platform that you mentioned, Clubhouse, the other one that comes to mind is Lunch Club. And I don't know if you've looked at that, but it's a little bit like Kinetic, but the problem is it's national. So it seems very random. Not that the people that one meets there aren't interesting, but what I really like about Kinetic is it's local. So you're meeting people whom you may actually run across in real life especially once we get through this pandemic and people are out and about again.
I think that's definitely a fair assumption, and for sure I've heard about them and aware of them and all those good things. I think there's a different process in our methodology and how we do our matching, and what alludes to a richer experience in how we bring our professionals together that I won't go into too much detail on, as that's part of our secret sauce. But I think with that, it's one of the reasons why we've actually had folks on Lunch Club that have come to Kinetic that have said, hey, I just get a better experience here, and they've moved off or are splitting their time or actually increasing their time on Kinetic, decreasing the time on other platforms, because we've just been able to build that consistency. So I think another thing too is that we're building in public, right? We're building out in the open. If you go to our website, you'll see the counts of how many members are signed up and how many conversation minutes have been shared based on the introductions that we make in the office hours, how many industries are being represented. When we have onboarding calls or when you have your first call when you sign up, it's going to be with one of the co-founders, because it's a very personalized experience, and that's something that you're not going to be able to get in other places. And I think too, when you take into consideration people's aspirations and people's goals, especially when it comes to their professional careers, it's extremely personal. So it takes a personalized approach. One of the things that we often say is we don't hide behind our tech. You're never gonna hear us or see on our website or any of our materials, hey, how great our AI is or how great our machine learning is or anything of that nature. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter how good that is if it doesn't produce the results that that person or that member is looking for. So, we very much take a human-centric approach to something that's very personal.
Excellent. Another something you alluded to earlier was having done things differently. So if you would sort of finish this sentence, knowing what I know now, if I were to start over today, what I would do differently is...
I think on the fundraising part, just because it's so active right now, I wouldn't spend the time trying to convince the wrong potential investors. It's okay to say no and say, hey, this might not be right for you, which also may not be right for them, and just walking away and going to find other alternatives. So I think that's a big thing that, spending time on trying to convince the wrong people doesn't do anybody any good. It leads to a lot of frustration. And I think too, just really understanding product market fit before before you try to double down on a certain industry or a certain segment, because again, can lead to a lot of frustration and a lot of long nights of long sleepless nights for sure. So I think those would be the two things that I would do over.
Okay. And so you've obviously had startup experience when you were at Kipsu, a startup previously, and now with your own startup there at Kinetic. What's the most important advice you could offer to an entrepreneur starting out today?
Just start. I mean, just start. I think we so often, in general, build up, taking a step of any size, way more than it has to be, and we overanalyze. We have a tendency to overanalyze. There's a great book that I often reference, "Never Split the Difference" by Chris Voss, who was a hostage, FBI negotiator, and in it he talks about how we as people overvalue losing something than gaining something new. So if we go into it and we say, hey, I'm just going to take this small step and just try this one thing today. I'm going to send out this one email, or I'm going to make this one phone call, or I'm going to do 15 minutes worth of research on this idea that I may have. Definitely don't go quit your day job, and don't, think that through and take a risk assessment before you go in full time. But it's easier to start than a lot of people think. And whatever step you take, however big or small, it's a first step, and it often will create the momentum to keep going.
Awesome. So last question, how do people connect with you, find out more about the company? What's the best way to reach you?
You can sign up. You can sign up at joinkinetic.com and add to the wait list. Again, part of our thoughtfulness in making the introductions is making sure that those that we grant access to, we do it in a really controlled manner, so that we can still have that high quality of introduction and conversations as we grow and as we scale. But you can find us on any social channel at Join Kinetic, whether it is LinkedIn or Twitter, Instagram. And you ever have questions, can email us too at support@joinkinetic.com.
Great. Well, thanks for your time today, Kris. This has been awesome to learn more about Join Kinetic. And I should make clear, I am a member, and I've only had a couple of meetings so far, but they've gone very well. So
awesome.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been great.